That's speaking up. That steering committee might have voting members of one county rep, one city rep, and a current housing authority representative to begin bringing the housing authority into the formal discussions. Of that, there would be 3 voting members on the steering committee member, again, with the intent, especially the housing authority membership, to begin bringing the current housing authority into that down the road role of being a multi-jurisdictional housing authority that would take over the management of the housing director person. And maybe also either on that steering committee as non-voting members or an advisory panel that is invited to the meetings, some other representatives, like someone from the Housing Coalition, someone from the Policy Advisory Team. And I think this is to be fleshed out, maybe someone from EDC, maybe some representative from manufactured home communities, that, some still manageable number of people, but to have that core, more nimble 3 voting member steering committee that would be the initial management entity of the housing project. And also agree, like, so the fire management, funding and management split is kind of a starting model.
Yeah, so people understand, under the fire IGA between the city and county, there is a core board that reports out to city council and county commissioner, but that board is a decision-making board around the fire department. And it's one county commissioner, one city person. And I think the third is just at large.
Yeah, and sorry, my brain is catching up. I think also, some things that we, sort of flagged as needing further discussion are, I think the IGA should determine what decisions can the steering committee take and what have to come back to city council and the BOCC as a whole, like, budget decisions, maybe some language about the determination of the steering committee and how it does, some anticipation of how it turns over to the future multi-jurisdictional housing association.
Yeah, I have the evolution of that steering committee into more of an advisory group under a timeline, kind of maybe putting in that IGA specific timelines so that we have kind of an idea of how quickly we want to work. So yeah, I think you covered much all of it.
So I think what I'm hearing is that the position would be a county position where HR would be provided from the county, and the steering committee would give direction.
Yeah.
Sounded like Noah had a question.
Would they have like a day-to-day manager at the county?
Good question.
I would propose that they have a day-to-day manager at the county in addition to the steering committee. I think I'm too
That's either.
Yeah.
Well, that's good point. Yeah. I've never heard of that. That's so cool.
I mean, it would just, like, I want to bring this person into like a position that they can be successful in, and bring them into a steering committee boss situation seems like potential for pitfalls.
Well, it would be kind of it would be in reverse really of how the fire department works. So the fire department day-to-day management falls under the mayor and city council. So it would be in the reverse, where day-to-day management would fall under like the county manager position, but that steering committee would really drive the direction of that.
Their strategic work.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Other thoughts, comments, questions? And I forgot to introduce who is online. That first one.
So I would just like to remind everyone to please be mindful of the virtual participants. We have Councilmember Cisco Tharp, Councilwoman Jane Gowan, and a representative from Chafee Housing Trust, Reed McCollum. So just be mindful in case you're having a conversation and you see somebody trying to speak on the screen.
Thank you. Sorry, I meant to do that before we got started. Sometimes I get excited and jump right into it. Wait, you have a question? Okay.
I think one other thing, like, I don't know who decides this, or, is to figure out what the multi-jurisdictional housing authority board composition is, and I don't know if that needs to already be specified in the IGA, so we know what we're heading towards, or like.
That's gonna need its own IGA, I think, at a certain point, and you can definitely keep the current members, and then just make sure that you have a representative from city and county and have 7 total, or if it's decided that you want less people, to keep it small and just continue to have 5, and some people don't want to do it anymore, or, you know, vice versa, it could be 7, it could be 5. I think you can have up to 9.
Yeah.
But-
I guess the question is, does anyone think we need to sort of have more detail laid out now, or can we just?
I think you could work on those in parallel. for sure.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something that that person would work on?
Yeah.
as part of the-
Yeah, so as long as, I mean, like, yeah, I think it's in the job description as a duty that they would do. They would have a steering committee that would have representation from the 3 bodies, and so that they would have an opportunity to work on it.
Great, so who is going to continue working on that IGA?
We'll let Christiana, the city attorney, work on it.
Okay.
I will get her the parameters probably next week. I'm kind of working with 3 things right now, including ballot issue. I didn't enjoy that quite yet.
Do you want the Chaffey County one, or are you gonna base it off of the
Hadn't really
fire one?
gone that far with it. So, yeah, if there's a Chaffey County IGA in place, I'd like to see that.
Okay. Put that as a to-do for me. Other questions?
I, just as part of the housing coalition, I'd really like to see somebody on the advisory for that, just for, you know, institutional memory and being that we're most familiar with the housing assessment and that sort of thing, with whoever this ends up being, to support them and in what's happened and sort of where things are. So I think that's a really good idea as part of this, but if we can, I think that we could work on that as far as who represents us.
Yeah, if you want to strike that balance of having the right people at the table and not having a 27-person.
Yeah, they don't need 37 bosses. That makes it worse.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else about the position location, we can move on to discuss the funding of the position. That sound good? So I think that you guys had discussed that a little bit as well. Who would like to present your proposition?
We really didn't get it too much.
No, not too much.
We're getting on somebody else's problem.
Yeah. Well, maybe not to be overly bold, I think by referencing the fire IGA, there's a 70-30 split.
That's what I have
City
in my
there.
notes too.
Just a work session, but that seems like a good place to start.
I think it's a good place to start. I mean, to be equally bold, I'm not sure this is more like a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
In terms of how this responsibility rolls out. So, but then where is that funding coming from? Because one of the things, the ballot initiative, it's going to supply, assuming it passes, X number of dollars to the housing coalition per year. Is that money part of how we pay a housing director? I don't know. I think the city and county can agree on a split. But we also have to decide, is there a third party helping the fund?
Yeah. And I think honestly, like, we're trying to get our head around there, and there's like ARP funding, there's like some new state legislation that we're still getting they're still getting their heads around on how to spend, like, so I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Not specifically allocated to
Yeah.
assisted housing.
we're kind of trying to figure out what those are.
So what do you think, Chrissy?
I'm just your facilitator. I don't know. I think I heard you say that a county city split of county contributing 70 and 30, or a 50-50 between county and city, with flexibility to utilize other funds such as funds that come down from the state or American Rescue Funds.
Well, I think there's also, again, I don't know how much this has to go with that, but I think there's that core funding of the position itself, and then there's other things we want to do.
I thought it was one of the reasons we wanted to go to the ballot was to have some sustainable funding for a director, and maybe only a third of that, maybe it's a third between that, the city and county. That would make that work.
Yeah, and one clarifying point, I think I heard you say that the ballot initiative would fund the housing coalition, and that's not true. It would fund a housing fund that
Right,
this
no, I
director.
may have said that, but I misspoke.
Okay.
I get that. It's a city initiative. I don't know what chance I give this a pass. Because Tabor forces certain wording into a ballot. The first line would scare everybody half to death, which is the point. That's what Tabor did. So we'll see. But yes, that would go into a city account, a housing account. And then, we probably would need to have a clear understanding of how that gets spent out of that account. Or if some entity, housing coalition, in the short term, then, bills the city for those funds, and they're remitted out of that fund.
Do we have to specify that on the ballot?
We do not.
But it will be specified that the money collected would be set aside for housing.
That's what's in the
Housing issue.
housing programs.
Because we had, the menu of different things in the toolbox.
Right.
And the hope is to eventually let this person build those different tools and have funding for that.
Right. And there will eventually be more than just, if that tax passes, feeding into that fund. Right. And hopefully the county would eventually create a fund specifically for housing.
Well, the other thing that I brought up is that this ballot initiative aside,
Not
that maybe in our budget, the city and county each commit X amount of dollars into the housing, programs. Without getting into too much detail on what that might mean, we would have 3 different funding sources into housing programs or housing director. It would take pretty strong legal formalized understanding of how that's going to work, so that any future political decision couldn't wipe that out.
right. And yeah, I think there is an eventual role for some of that money to come directly to the housing authority as well, right? Like no
Yeah.
time soon,
I would,
but probably pre-transition of the director, start moving some of that money into the housing authority.
I think that would be good.
Well, also I'll just say, as I think about this, what I need to sort of find the right balance in the IGA language, because I wouldn't want to write it so 70-30 or 50-50, where if we hustled some DOLA money and you didn't have the match, I don't want to not move on that because you don't have 7,000 that week.
We got that.
Oh, excellent. Well, maybe it's our problem.
Hey,
So I think what I'm hearing is that the continued work on lining out both where the position is going to land and the funding of the position is going to be work between Greg and bouncing that back between the BOCC and Greg. And is there any supports needed other than getting the Chafee
I don't
idea?
think so, but could we agree in principle that maybe it would be a third, assuming the ballot initiative passes, a third? Does that sound palatable to everybody? It would have a steady, funding mechanism through this, And if the city and county agree, then we funded it in perpetuity.
But then the city's funding 66% and the county's only funding 33, right? Because the city collects the ballots.
Yes, that's a good point, except that I don't think of that, that's going into a fund that's separate from the city's general fund.
Right.
So I don't think I would look at it.
But also you're kind of mandating what they're gonna pay, right? So if you're matching whatever the tax is, hopefully 100 to 150 a year, you're kind of telling them what they're gonna match.
think it
We're
was
approximating right now.
89, between 89 and 140
But
something.
last year was 92, we had 1.9.
If you are on that side, could you speak up a little bit more? Thank you.
Not sure. I know how to-
Speak up.
Huh? Yeah,
So maybe I missed some of the discussion, but, you know, we sort of proposed 3 different funding sources. Ballot initiative was one, mills were another, sales tax revenue, kind of construction materials. So I guess I just want to point that out. Maybe there's other discussion that I'm not aware of around that, but I don't know that where we left off, I didn't get the sense it was contingent on passing the ballot initiative. There were a couple other mechanisms. So. Or whatever.
I think it's a great point. I think whatever IG we enter into, it cannot be contingent on that.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't pass, then we would be dead in the water, but we would still have, we might say we do, 50-50 split after any available money from the ballot initiative fund, I'll call it that, whatever the fund would be in the city. So. It's a, just so everybody understands, I heard from the legal today that on this ballot initiative, we are intended for to be short-term rental only. It's not allowed. Well, I should say, if we did that, then the county would not be allowed, if there's any excise tax, which is a good excise tax, and lodging tax is an excise tax. I didn't understand what it was associated with that. If we do that, sorry. If we do an excise tax of any kind in the city, then the county cannot collect excise tax against anything in the city. Which means if we did short-term rentals only, the county still would not be able to collect that tax against other lodging establishments. And so, as Christy and I discussed, we've capped short-term rentals, so that excise tax is not going to grow. But other lodging establishments are going to grow over time in terms of money. So to me, at least, it's kind of an all or nothing proposition. We either have to include all lodging or just not do it at all.
STRs will grow a little bit, but it's not gonna be the same.
I understand.
Yeah.
The growth by price.
Yeah.
So Mayor, how do these other locations then have short-term rental excise taxes?
Because a lot of those places have city taxes already. And we
Just
don't.
there.
Well, even if they're statutory, they could have their own tax. We could establish our own tax. We just,
But you would have to establish your tax before before an excise tax, right?
Probably, but the point I'm trying to make is, for us, because of this definition of what is legally mandated between the county and the city, we're going to have to include all lodging establishments on this ballot initiative. That's not going to be an option.
And it's just lodging establishments within the city limits.
That's correct.
So the lodging establishments out in the county would not.
Would have
And-
no effect on whatsoever.
Would it make sense to do this to the county, or is that?
It's not costing.
Okay.
Is that make it less likely to pass in here? Like, does that matter in terms of like, its likelihood of passing? It increases the amount of money that the tax would collect.
I'm not sure.
Including all lodging establishments and not just having it on this too. Like,
I don't think that that's going to affect the people's perception, especially the way I have it. I asked them to change the wording And at first, she just said all lodging establishments that of less than 30 days. And I said, no, 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 no. I want this to say specifically short-term rentals and other lodging establishments of less than 30 days. She has changed it about because I really want for the voter to see short-term rental in there. That's one change that I've asked for.
Maybe then, I think the reason we went to 3% is because it wasn't affecting commercial lodging. Maybe we need to back it up to 2% if it has to go to everybody.
That may be a good idea, because we probably will get, if we back it up to 2, we'll probably get the about the same amount of money, now that we're including all those other establishments.
Why?
I thought we went to 3% because that way we don't have to go again, that we just thought we would,
No, I think that was part of
a
the.
lot of places are 5% or
Mhm.
more, and
Yeah.
most people don't even look at that when they go somewhere.
I think people are either going to vote for this or they're not.
I think the wording
Yeah,
is what's
like-
gonna kill us,
Oh, yeah.
like you said,
Would
I
you
don't
vote
think
for an
that-
increase in taxes too?
Yeah, because people don't understand it.
But that's going to be, it's literally going to be a city council decision about how this ballot initiative is going to read. And Christian is trying to get finalized for us. So we'll look at it on Tuesday and then make some decisions.
I think it's really important to have the good ballot language, but I also think that we were talking about some type of campaign for this ballot initiative. So having messaging that this is for short-term rentals, that this is a tourist tax, it will help to have the whatever the split is between the city and county publicized as well, to say, listen, we are doing this with the money that we already have, and it's important to us, and we need the people coming in from out of state. And so, like, I think a third is good messaging at
Yeah, because
least.
you don't get to say that in the ballot.
Right, but as part of the campaign, we get to explain what this is, and some people are only gonna read it, but if people get that, like, the city's in for this, the county's in for this, and we need even more because of how urgent it is, how expensive it is, whatever, and we're asking the tourists to pay this, I think that's a good sell.
So this might be somewhat unrelated, but Boulder County Housing Authority they had a ballot initiative that ultimately failed, and I think part of the reason was because they were not able to respond to questions or really misinformation after a certain period. Is that the same setup? Would that be the same setup on this?
No, the thing is, the government can't be involved in advocating for a ballot initiative.
I mean, they were a nonprofit and they were disallowed from doing that, so maybe that's a non-issue, but I think they would.
I think it's because they petitioned to get that on the ballot, which is a little different than our situation. I anticipate that there will be a community-led community outreach effort to explain what this tax is. It sounded like Councilmember Tharp has a question that he would like to ask. Tracy, if you would allow the member.
Yeah, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So just in hearing the complexity around if we pass an excise tax in the city, it impacts what the county can tax as well. Would it make more sense, and would it be possible to pass a county-wide excise tax that includes the STRs in the city? I see Tracy shaking her head.
Not allowed.
It's dictated by state statute. We've been down that road and don't have a workaround.
Oh,
for
okay.
it.
Cool. Thank you.
You mentioned 2%, going to 2%. I thought 1.9% was going to be allocated.
Right now, it says 4.92%. 1.92% would be remitted to the tourism family.
Oh, I see.
That would be, that can't be on the ballot, but it would be in the resolution.
We're just talking about the increase.
Yeah.
Because the same rule. Now the county can't collect that 1.92%, so it'll be part of our collection, and we'll remit back to the tourism panel. To us in the city council, the consensus was that it was very important to keep the tourism panel whole.
I just, when you were earlier.
Right.
I misunderstood.
That would leave us.
Point
Point
one.
away from strategy.
We're tucking it short
Thank
here.
you very much.
Did you have a question, Adam? No?
Don't scratch your ear. Don't do it.
Well, this is just conjectural, but I was in Summit County the other day and read the Summit Daily, which I do run over there. It's a free daily newspaper. And a lot of people in Summit County are saying, look, we've been discovered, we're overrun, we're overstressed. And a lot of us would like to take the money that's going to the tourist council and put it into affordable. We both benefit from the same type of tax base.
I think that's not an option. I think by state law, it's not an option. But
I think
county
so.
commissioners can see that.
Not correct.
There's many things doing it now.
Yeah, I think,
That's
I think statute is pretty, I don't, again, don't have a legal background to give a legal interpretation, but statute's pretty vague as to how you use that in terms of tourism dollars.
Sorry, to be clear, it's not allowable in the county. In the city, you guys could decide what to do entirely. So I think what I'm hearing Adam say, please correct me if I'm wrong, why are they continuing to give the 1.92% to the tourism panel? Is that your question?
That's what they're questioning in that county, in Summit County.
Yeah.
There are, in the Colorado Sun, there was an article a couple weeks ago. And same thing, too many tourists, and so they're converting, the tourism panel is actually using that money to, they're not marketing, like for example, Telluride, but they're telling people how to behave when they're in Telluride, which would be nice, right? Teach teach tourists not to behave badly.
The other part of it is this tourism panel has pretty much stopped marketing summer in Leadville Lake County. Now they market winter and shoulder seasons, which the need is still there. Yeah, summer, we need the help. Now you're close. We are overwhelmed, just like maybe not as bad as Suffolk County. You know, we see downtown on Tuesday and Wednesday now. It's crazy.
It's a relative scale, though.
It is, I know. But our businesses are overwhelmed, so
Yeah.
But
that's not particularly.
our
relevant.
tourism panel also kicks in for the visitor center, which is where the tourists need to go to learn how to behave. And where to go and not overrun businesses and use the restroom and stuff like that. So ours also has a little bit different function and a very, very, very minuscule budget in the first.
Comparatively.
And right, Summit County has been funding affordable housing for years, we have not.
And
Right,
we're
so
not-
like, that's
about
like a
20
last
years.
ditch effort to add funding. to
We're
the
like
existing
20
pot,
years
and we're
behind
just
that.
creating a pot, so.
But I see their point, like, why do we want to bring more people here? But yes, our tourism panel does do some things that nobody else would do, you know. So,
I'm just gonna step in a little bit. Could you guys raise your voice a little more? Sorry, the room is not good for the microphone.
I'm gonna play the devil's advocate for 1 second and ask the room what they think about the change to this ballot measured language. And see what people think about compromising, losing that tourism panel revenue for the hotels, motels to make it specifically a short-term rental excise tax, which would limit the pot. But I heard at least one hotel owner express some concern about that. So I'm just asking the room what you guys think about that.
I thought Greg said we couldn't.
Yeah.
We
No,
couldn't.
we can, but then you lose that revenue because the county can't collect it and we're not gonna collect it. Understand what I'm saying? So we would only collect the revenue, get short-term rentals.
So the 1.9 would stop
The
being.
1.92%,
lodging
I
in the
got
city.
then the
because
county
city
did not
doesn't have
collect
that.
it on the
Oh,
other
okay.
lodging establishments in the city.
Okay.
So it's kind of an all or nothing proposition in that sense. Now, to Christie's point, we could just say short-term rentals and we say, we'll forego the rest of that money.
And does that, I mean, do we have numbers as to what that means, or are we just like?
She's getting.
I
the
was
numbers
trying to
tomorrow.
pull up a
Okay.
lodging spreadsheet, but I just changed phones so it's not on my phone. But as I recall, commercial lodging is not that big a percentage of our
It was
lodging tax.
17%
Yeah,
of the total lodging tax. But what we talked about is, now we've capped short-term rentals, so there's gonna be no growth there. Growth will be in other lodging. As hotels and more lodging establishments are built within the city limits. So if we forego that, it may not seem significant now. but
yeah,
It could be in the
anticipating
future.
a hotel in the city.
Yeah.
Oh, we are.
In the rail
I
yard.
was like, yeah.
I thought he couldn't find them.
Well, it's ready to roll. They were doing this last weekend. And that's gonna be part of the PUD we're gonna be looking at on Tuesday. Or no, the week after.
Yeah, it doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah, I think if we wanted to keep our options open to learn from places like Summit County or Mount Crested or wherever they're making those adjustments to their tourism dollars, it's better to have the excess dollars and
Right, and
than to go through the work again.
And the city's made a commitment to keeping the tourism budget whole, right? So if we lost money, then it'd have to go from like 1.92 to like 2 point something in order to not have their budget get cut, and then less of that would go to housing.
That's
Right, so-
important now.
It just seems unnecessary. I don't think having it be short-term rentals and lodging seems like it would make enough of a difference to make it not pass where it would only pass it for the short-term rentals.
And I mean, we're essentially, the reason why we're doing this is to solve a problem for our commercial people. We're trying to solve a housing problem, so they'll have employees and that sort of thing. So and I honestly, I don't think it's going to affect, people don't look at that extra.
I don't think it will affect that. Well, I think what Christian's getting at, I think it's a very good point, is I think the other lodging establishments feel like there's an uneven playing field, and they're right. And so they thought that taxing short-term rentals and not taxing them was at least try to level that playing field.
And I agree, but I think that the tax that really is the burdensome one is the state level that needs to be fixed, not this one. I don't think this is a.
Is there, just to be difficult, is there any possibility that we could tax commercial and short-term rentals? We'll tax them both, but tax short-term rentals more, would that be allowed?
Ooh,
I bet you would have to run two different measures.
I bet you would.
You would, you couldn't put that on the same.
I would think that.
It seems like a single issue, right? Like that's part of.
Because she said we can't do just short-term rentals because that messes up the county, but if we do both commercial lodging, short-term rentals, but at different rates on the same, we can't do that on the same bill.
I don't
think it's
know.
really
It's actually a pretty good question. You did throw a wrench in.
Yes.
Sorry.
I look at the perspective of, the consumer. I rent places, on Airbnb, or if you rent a room, you don't even know what the taxes are until you've already booked the place. And I've never not canceled my, I never checked to see if the county, if I could find a spot in the county, for lower taxes. I just don't think that it'll make much of a difference, and I'm optimistic. I really think this has been passing in other communities, and so I'm optimistic that we can get the messaging out there.
I'm gonna check and I'm gonna ask that question. I wouldn't want to go to two ballots.
No.
Two ballot measures, but if we could differentiate on the same ballot, maybe that would work.
There was a question in the chat if the tourism panel was invited tonight, and the president was invited, Becky Edwards, but she's not here tonight. I will be sure to follow up. I went to their meeting last week to let them know about the change, and they were in favor. This is what we're discussing now is different than what I presented to them last week, so I would want to go back to them again before they were willing to write a letter of support to the editor. So I would explain it to them again, once we know what direction we're going.
We're gonna have to know pretty quickly. This is something that is pressing.
Is there any more support needed for city council to get to that decision on, is it next Tuesday?
Yes. It's on the agenda for.
Community feedback or anything that we can help you with to make that decision?
You guys think? I thought so too.
I think the only concern was keeping the tourism budget. Yeah.
That was a showstopper for a couple of people, myself included.
Another question in the chat was, what do we anticipate this will generate? And on the low end, I think it's around 90,000, and actually, I feel like that's not right, because that was what was being
I
collected.
still 179,000 in my mind at 5% or 4.92%. But you and I need to confirm that in the morning, so I can get the ballot language.
And I can include it in the,
And if we included lodging, that would increase by 17%.
Right, so I have 206,000, and what Christiana says, make sure you don't make it less than what you're gonna collect, because then you're gonna have to remit to everyone who stayed in Lake County in the last year. We don't want to do that.
so we want to make sure we overestimate it, and I'll send that information out in the notes.
So if lodging establishments continue to grow, you still couldn't collect over.
Only the first year.
Okay,
That only applies to the first year. After that, you're safe.
okay.
Why that is, I have no idea. That's what I understand.
Kim, your question is, if I'm understanding, so it might be my same question, is that if we keep adding hotels, then we don't have to go back and expand the anticipated revenue on the ballot
No.
again after the first year.
After the
So,
first year.
great.
So it was like anticipated to bring in X amount within the first year.
That's what it says.
Okay, any more questions on that? Oh, sorry, I do have one more thing that we should talk about while we're talking about short-term rental excise tax. The main concern from the tourism panel is how that money would be remitted to the county, because how they pay for stuff right now is they submit an invoice to the county and the county pays that invoice. So the recommendation was that the city remit the 1.92% to the county. How does everyone feel about that? Do we have any questions about it?
Maybe the question would be, do we do it quarterly, do we do it every 6 months?
I think that they get the money from the state quarterly, the tourism panel. That's what their finances showed.
It was a quarterly.
Check when they get them.
I think they talked about the, it might be faster, if the city was collecting it, they might get it faster than what the state remits it.
I would assume it's probably true. Assuming, the state remits to us.
Does
it'd be faster.
Does the Department of Revenue remit directly to you for sales tax, or does the county
The
remit to
county
you?
remits to us.
So I would assume that it may actually happen with it coming through the county and then the county remitting it to you.
That's an interesting thought. I think not,
No?
because this would be a direct city sales tax.
Okay,
And that would be a relationship between,
you
state
and
and
the
city.
COR, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
When we were on that phone call, that's how she presented it.
okay.
This, if this passes.
Would there need to be,
I mean, I doubt that their budget is big enough that the county couldn't handle it cash flow wise, even if you got an invoice before you guys see it anyway. So it's, I mean, it should be decided, but it's not.
The tourism panel has a tendency to carry a fund balance to help with the cash flow. So I wouldn't anticipate that being a problem, because they're already used to spending on that quarterly basis of having that lagging revenue.
Yeah, they tend to spend last year's money this year
Yeah, yeah.
and hold on to the money they get this year till next year.
That is so ungoverned.
I don't think they understand the budget.
They actually only spend what they make. What's wrong?
You don't have Tabor.
We print money in the basement.
That's nice.
What your continuous estimation of income.
No, it's always the same, right?
Okay, if there's nothing else to discuss about the ballot measure, then are we ready to move on to talking about the job description? Great. So thank you, everybody who submitted comments and questions. I have incorporated most of the comments into this document. And then I have a list of questions that were brought up that I was going to run by everybody and solicit feedback. So the first comment that I received was from Dan Osborne, and he is a member of the Leadville Housing Authority. And he is suggesting that the county and city both pursue inclusionary housing requirements in order to support deed restriction. No. So just thoughts on that, how that ties into moving forward this work, and I guess wanting to hear what the appetite from both city and county on that is.
Inclusionary zoning?
I don't think he was advocating that inclusionary zoning specifically. I think he was saying that like what we don't want to end up in is a situation in which we've hired somebody and there's nothing for them to work on in the first year because city and county have not taken like steps in code to create an environment in which they have work to do. For example, passing an inclusionary zoning policy, but I think it was more of a for example. It's a good one, but I think it's like just that.
I think Dan was saying pretty definitively that he didn't think we should hire someone until that's in place. I mean, you know, it was pretty strident.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and said, I don't think so.
But how long is it it's gonna take them to hire somebody? And how long would it take us to put together something of like an annexation policy, for instance, saying we're gonna require this much in deed restricted housing for any new annex area?
If they do that, then we're not gonna add any more problems. So unless we had something in mind.
Well, then what about like for the finance parcel? The other recommendation that you had was having site control over the city or county parcels that can be made available for low income housing.
So
That doesn't make any- Yeah, exactly. The whole parcel is low income and affordable.
something though that I would maybe disagree with Dan about is that I completely understand where he's coming from. However, this position from the job description already is this person would be helping the city and county move in the direction of getting those things in place ahead of time anyways. So that would technically, yeah.
Or the zone changes.
Exactly. And so that's part of their job is to make those things happen so that when the transfer does indeed occur or deed restrictions do come online, that they're then making sure that there's other things that are supporting that additionally.
I think if anything, it's just a good reminder to city and county that like hiring this position does not mean that like you checked your responsibility for housing and that like you're good, you're done, right? But that there will be, right, and and writing it in an IGA or whatever, that doesn't have to be codified or in a contract anywhere, but that like the expectation is that you will take policy recommendations from this person.
I don't have a problem, but the problem really is that we'll talk about from the city standpoint. Inclusionary zoning won't make any sense for us. For the county, it might in the future, like for the Gateway project or something like that. But you know, deed restrictions to me are much more important. And then you know, land available for low income and affordable housing, you know, would answer some of those questions right on the front end. So that's my thought process.
I don't think we need to wait on this. I think this is great and these things have to be happening concurrently.
Okay, next up, there was a comment about the second paragraph, which we had some great suggestions on, and it has been reworked from the original proposal. And just some things I want to bring up from that is this second paragraph indicates that multi-jurisdictional housing authority will be pursued, and that the steering committee will oversee this position. And then
Can we change that based on our earlier discussion? Right, that they will report to the county manager.
right, that, yeah.
And then add some language about the steering committee as like a strategic planning board or whatever, but that they will have a single person as their boss.
Okay, so at the very end, it says this position reports to, and I'm gonna write county manager, and then someone help me with.
Which
I think we need to say something like a day-to-day report to the county manager, but at least as we were talking about the IGA, I mean, there's gonna be some decisions that have to come
From the steering
from the
committee.
steering committee, I mean, in terms of spending big chunks of money.
And is also under advisement of the steering committee.
Okay, so this position reports,
Day-to-day report to the county manager,
For day-to-day
And-
oversight.
you know, and something, the steering committee.
let me try that again.
Like goals and objectives set out and outlined by the steering committee. I don't know.
And approvals as specified in the IGA or something.
So this position reports to the county manager for day-to-day oversight with direction from the steering committee.
Or certain approvals, yeah.
For approvals and decisions as specified in the IGA.
Get that, Augustine?
Oversight.
For approvals and decisions as specified in the IGA.
Should the job description reference an idea that it was, I mean, it will exist probably by the time it's posted, but should it reference another document? Like, if you were looking at this job description as an applicant, would that like?
I mean, maybe we can talk about that in next steps about what, I mean, like we got it all. I mean, yeah, we probably shouldn't post a job description until we kind of have an IGA in place and some commitment to the core funding.
Mayor, how does the fire chief's job description read in terms of
I don't know if I've
reporting?
ever read this job. He reports directly to me.
Okay,
You know, that it's more complicated than that, and he takes advisement from the fire management board.
okay,
So I think Jeff's right on track, I just don't know how you word it. I think
okay.
you have to be careful how you word it, because you don't want to scare a professional off, because they say, who am I working for?
Yeah, okay,
And in the future, you know, the fire chief will work directly, will report directly to
I think, like, in the summary, like, for sake of not scaring somebody off on the first half of the first page, it can say, like, initially report to the county manager, and somewhere in essential duties and responsibilities, it can say, add mention the steering committee and who that's made up of. And then make sure during the interview process to be clear, right, so that they don't feel like they've been bait and switched, that like they will have a day-to-day manager, and they will also take strategic advice and have to come for like the big budget decisions to a board that includes members of city, county, and housing. I don't think that we have to put everything in every sentence.
no, I think that makes sense. I think it's just how you would word it in those, on that second page, like.
Right, I mean, to me, the purpose of this sentence is just to say that you will live in the county for the first 2 years, and then you will transition to the executive director of the housing authority. And that's the only purpose of that sentence. And then like, there's another couple pages where you can get into the details of what that actually.
Okay, I think that's great.
Anyone opposed to that? Great. The next comment, I tried to put them in order of how the document went, was another comment from Dan Osborne about what are the formal steps the housing authority needs to take to prepare for the transition of incorporating this position on board resolution, if so, in August. Any support needed there, conversation? Seems like that was more aimed towards you guys, but I've
Yeah, I
just been
think- I
bringing
mean-
all the things here.
Like, we have no record of this in our minutes because we haven't, like, these are not our board meetings. So I think
It
it's just,
seems premature.
yeah, like, I don't think we have to do it now, right? Like, I think, but it is something that we need to do as a board, right? So that, like, we have formally committed to this process. And whatever that looks like, either the ultimate transition or sitting on the steering committee or both, or whatever, but it needs to be in our. part of the process.
And also, I haven't talked to anyone on the current housing authority's board about whether they want to be on the steering committee. Yeah, it just seemed it was a good idea. So I think that discussion should happen.
Christie, did this came, excuse me, from Chafee, from Reed at Chafee?
This came from Becky Gray, the director. So this was the job description that she responded to for her position. Then the Housing Coalition worked on it before it came to this group,
The late.
the Lake County.
To answer your question, Jeff, I think absolutely, you know, if there's a steering committee, I mean, that's only gonna help with the transition.
That was the intent, yeah.
So it only makes sense that the housing authority was.
Yes.
And also remember the original intent of the steering committee for the fire, management board was to give a voice to all entities involved in the IGA.
Yes.
I'll also say, well, let me exclude people online, but in addition to the job description coming from Becky Gray, this idea of a steering committee initially made up of the the political jurisdictions, and then transitioning to a board of a multi-jurisdictional housing authority is also the model.
Do we have you seen anything about like how that functionally worked?
Yeah.
Like what, did they also have a day-to-day manager? Did she? only come to the steering
That's
committee?
good, but I didn't ask that.
I think she directly reports to the county manager
Okay.
for day-to-day
Right,
stuff.
Yeah. And their steering committee is like a dozen people because they have more cities.
And I would just say that, Becky Gray is, amazing. So she obviously could handle that really well. And I think that's the caliber of person we want to shoot for. And be realistic about what we might need to bring to the table to get that person here. Because that's what Chaffey County had to do to get her. They had to really step up and put themselves outside of what is normal for them to get her there. And it's been successful. She's put a lot of really good things in place. Okay. Is there any support needed for the housing authority? Do we need anybody to come and present this plan to the housing authority, or you guys feel confident in talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is a timeline yet of like when we're hoping to have this finalized and posted when the IGA might exist, but I think we would wait until that's ready to go until we.
I don't know that we need to wait on the IGA. The IGA is more of a understanding between the city and county about sharing funding and maybe resources. So I don't think the IGA is going to get into a lot of detail in terms of the housing authority or the housing coalition.
I think just confirming that the housing authority, the current housing authority would like one of the 3 seats on the steering.
And that's something that we should take formal action on, right? In one of our meetings.
Well, the housing coalition has to be in the committee as well, and an advisory board. Which direction do you think they go? Because that would be 4 members, not 3. That's all I'm getting at.
And why is it housing authority and housing coalition or nothing?
Oh, it's not. I wasn't suggesting that.
Okay.
No, just that Amy had suggested the Housing Coalition should have a member on that board, and I thought that seemed very reasonable, and don't know why we wouldn't do that.
Then you need to go to 5 so you can break it up.
But
And except for advisory in nature, there's no
yeah.
voting that goes on.
Well, there would be, because, I mean, part of the function is like budget questions.
And you could do something like an executive committee where, you guys are the ones with the money and the interest, you could do the housing authority, county and city as the voting
Yeah.
members, because you're controlling the actual money and the person. And
That's, yeah,
but
that's kind of what we had
you
talked
can
about
have
too.
other people that are as an advisory role.
Yeah,
And so that's, but it would be good to have those voices in the room.
Yeah.
Because the EDC gets a lot of inquiries, about development and that sort of thing, so it's good for them to be in the loop if they want to be.
yeah.
That
in
could be
that sort of thing.
certainly a fit.
Mhm.
But I don't think we need
Or
to have a huge
Either
thing.
3 voting members.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think I was maybe being imprecise, talking about the steering committee as the three. I think it's like the voting, or the executive committee, or the voting members of the steering committee are the city, county, housing authority, and then whatever the right number of additional.
Coalition, as always, functions as getting the community involved, getting the community
Yeah.
perception, and also kind of like, okay, this is what the housing assessment said, this is what the action plan said, and just kind of reminding people of what's going on and bringing people to the table and facilitating that. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a voting thing, but it's
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
As well as bringing the equity ones.
And the equity ones, yes, because
Great. Any more questions?
So I'm still wondering, does the housing authority have to take a vote on that, or do you guys just,
I mean, I think
do you guys have to do a vote on it, or?
I mean, I think the BOCC and the council will have to vote to approve the IGA.
And that would be substantial.
And
Yeah,
I think the housing authority should let us know before we do that, if you don't want to be on the voting steering committee.
yeah,
I don't know if you need to take a vote or not on saying that, but please let us know if you don't want to be on that.
yeah.
And I think I've heard from you guys that you would hope to get this position established before the end of the year. This is not something we're waiting till 2022 to establish. So to
I
your
think-
question, Noah, about the timing,
I think we had anticipated or talked about trying to get these pieces in place so that when 2022 comes, the money's already there, so that if we had the opportunity to recruit someone in these last 6 months of 2021, we could start them like right away, because this would already all be in place. So we wouldn't have to, fund them and then still have some of these logistical pieces that needed to be put in place.
I might even say one more step faster than that. I mean, I think definitely get the IGA in place as fast as we can between the city and county.
Right.
And then, for that core funding of the staff position, if we feel confidence that we can, I don't know what that feels like, but I think we should post it as soon as we can, because it's
Yeah.
gonna take, it's gonna take till the end of the year to work through that, the IGA and
And the hiring
that,
process.
but, I think.
And I think I've already said this, but I believe that the wording in the IGA has to be such that the ballot measure would not stop the hiring of this person and the sharing of that
Yeah.
cost.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's what I was trying to say without, I just feel like we hopefully could mentally commit the money to at least get us through 3 or 6 or 9, like into the 2022 budget year, hiring someone as soon as we can make that work.
I'm committed to this. I think you guys are. I would say we're gonna have a lot of budget pressures in
Yeah.
2022. So just hang on to your hats.
But also, as I was thinking about this, the amount of money and effort for all the housing policy stuff, I mean, this core position is, you know, if we can't fund this, like, we've got bigger problems.
This is incredibly important.
And this qualifies for ARP funding, doesn't it? Housing.
I'm actually taking a webinar next week. It was
I
offered
think it
today.
does.
In fact, let me see.
We think so, but the guidance has been
The
slow
guidance
and
has
vague.
has been slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The webinar is Wednesday at 10 o'clock, Wednesday the 11th at 10 o'clock. So I'll be, Donna and I'll be attending that webinar to get some clarity on what we can use our money on.
It does talk about housing infrastructure and infrastructure in relation to affordable housing, but there's not any kind of specific guidance of whether that's staffing or physical infrastructure or anything like that yet. So, and given that we have 3 years to spend that, I think you can always, I believe from the guidance that's come out most recently, backfill. So like if the county, the city fronted that from their general fund, and then we just determined that we wanted to backfill the ARP funds, we could always do that.
Kim, had a question.
Well, I was just wondering, have you discussed a hiring committee?
You volunteering?
No, we were thinking the steering committee would also be the hiring committee. I didn't know. What's that?
That, I think that's really, I guess it is gonna be a county employee. I thought about that. I thought the housing coalition would probably handle that part of it, but if it's gonna be a county employee, maybe not.
I mean, I think county HR is definitely ready for this position. We can make sure it's posted. We can make sure it's posted legally. We can do the advertising. I bet, I mean, yeah, who's on the hiring panel? Yeah, steering committee sounds like a good start. Or, yeah, plus volunteers.
And then we had a comment in the chat from Reed McCullough saying it's worth considering having on that advisory committee some low income representation and Spanish speaking representation. So I would assume that if that advisory board is included in the hiring process, that would help with equity as well.
Yeah.
Are you equating the advisory board with the steering committee?
The advisory committee, from what I heard earlier, would be the additional people outside of the 3. So the 3 voting members would be from county, city, and housing authority, and then the extra would be deemed
And just
people you wanted advice on.
to be clear, the person from the city does not have to be. So we'll talk to the council in terms of, and the IJ can just say a representative of the city.
Okay.
And then we can decide later who that's going to be.
Okay.
Likewise, it could be kind of manager, right? In the election.
It could be.
But then you still need to decide, because if this person is helping city and county to push forward ordinances, policy, whatever, how are they then reporting to you?
Yeah.
And getting that across? Is it the city manager, or is there just going to be a disconnect between that director and the council and BOCC?
Well, and that's why I do, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I do think the IGA needs to be pretty clear on what level of spending or what kinds of decisions need to go back to the BOCC as a whole and the city council.
Yeah.
Which I think addresses that point. Just so it's, so people know what they do and don't have to
Sure, you give them a budget and expect them to operate within that budget. They don't have to come back to you, necessarily for spending decisions unless it's going to be outside of the budget.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and, but if half of your budget is signing a contract for something, it might be good to make sure.
It's out there.
No, I get it, we have a basic rule in place in the city council. That if there is an expenditure that's more than $55,000 outside of that budgetary line item, have to come to city council for approval.
I have not read the IGA from Safety County yet, but it is 7 pages. So I'm gonna assume it has some outlines. Okay. Any more discussion before we move on to more comments? Okay, core competency number 9, there was a question of, should we set a year of experience? How many years we're looking for, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, was the question?
Isn't it listed 6 or more in the education and experience section? With a minimum of 3 years experience in the development of government subsidized housing.
So would you want that echoed here? Moved somewhere that it comes before 9? Is it fine being down there? Again, I'm just bringing the comments that were seen.
I think functionally, it doesn't belong in the core competencies, it belongs in qualifications or experience. So I think it's okay the way that it's written, but I don't think it would hurt to include it twice if it's important.
I think the way it's worded, if you wanted to include it twice, because I think here experience working for or leading a housing program is pretty vague. But then I think if you wanted to get in education and experience, right? That's where you were thinking of putting it, Noah. So you're talking about-
It's written, yeah, because I mean, the way that it's written, these are the core competencies or responsibilities that they will have,
Yeah,
not necessarily experiences and qualifications that they should have had coming into this position. So it
yeah,
would, it changes the continuity of the section.
yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's important to leave it there, because otherwise you're gonna take a big part of what we're expecting.
I think,
And then over here, you know, we also say any combination of education, training, and experience which provides the required knowledge, skills, and abilities. So we're sort of giving ourselves a out if we have a good chance.
Sorry.
Fit the mold. Anyways, so I don't think it's that.
I think if there are pieces of the core competencies that are like specifically important, that are like deal breakers, they should be included in the education and experience section explicitly. But I don't think that including minimum years qualifications in the expected responsibilities is a good way to do it. So if we wanted to be more explicit, instead of saying, 3 years experience in development of government subsidized housing, like if there are pieces of that that are important or that we anticipate needing to happen in the first 2 years, then pulling those out of the responsibilities and putting them into qualifications makes sense.
And I think it's good as is, with it just in that one place. I mean, with the 1.5 pages of things they're supposed to be able to do, like, plus that, I don't know if you need to repeat it.
The next one,
Christie, before we flip off that page, it says it's got 2-year minimum in here, a couple of places, and I understand we want somebody that's a long-term commitment, but if it's an at-will employee, putting a commitment time frame on that is problematic.
I would disagree with, we do all the time. And we know it's not enforceable, but it's just an understanding.
Yeah. And we've had people at Build a Generation who, like, we've explicitly said this is the time frame we're looking for, and they told us that doesn't work for them. And so, like, some people, yes, will be like, oh, whatever, like, I'll leave and they can't do anything about it. But some people will be honest about that doesn't work for my family. But it is helpful to them. So putting it out there, I think, is good practice.
And I also think some of the language in there shows an intent that this is not like a 1 or 2 year thing. That, the intent is for this to progress. So I think that makes it more appealing to a good candidate.
that address your concern, Dan?
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Okay, before, when the Housing Coalition finished with this, the number 1 item listed under essential duties had to do with doing like community communications and coordination. And the feedback that I got was that it might be prudent to move that under 10 and make it a subpoint. So I moved number 1 to 10A, and it now says communicates and coordinates activity to ensure efforts are complementary to, actually, no, I think it's 9A, sorry. At the direction of the steering committee and in coordination with the Housing Coalition and other partners, conducts community outreach to develop an understanding of affordable housing issues in the community, contacts and communicates with businesses and private and public sector agencies to coordinate and assist in meeting community needs, performs speaking engagements, develops media responses and press releases. We just kind of moved it around a little bit and changed it. Any concern about that? Okay. And then there was a suggestion for essential duties number 3 and 4. They said before collaborates with the Housing Coalition and sorry, it must have been 2 and 3. Works with the Housing Coalition and collaborates with the Housing Coalition, and the suggestion was to change that to works with the city and county in number 2 and collaborates with the city, county, and stakeholders in number 3.
Should that just be the steering committee?
Steering committee, I think. Okay, so in 2 and 3, we're going to remove city and county and stakeholders and replace it with steering committee.
Well, I think stakeholders is still okay to accomplish these goals,
Okay.
but it's replace city and county with
Okay.
stakeholders. Is that what?
So anyone opposed to that?
Collaborates with the
And stakeholders.
student.
For number 3.
Yeah. Works with steering committee to set strategic goals, collaborates with steering committee and stakeholders to accomplish.
Great. And then 10, let's see. 9C, there was a comment about before this read, initiates an outreach program with builders, developers, making them aware of just initiatives. And there was a comment that said, we should make sure to highlight that there may be local initiatives and state and national initiatives. I'm not sure if you guys read that comment, and I was hoping that I had incorporated it fully. Do you guys feel like I did that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Anyone opposed to that change? Okay, and then 9F. Yes, so someone made a suggestion that we replace city and county with the Leadville Urban Renewal Authority in this item, and I just don't know enough about that to see.
No, appropriate. No, I don't think so.
Okay, and then I see city and county and multiple other places. Should we replace any place that there is city and county with steering committee?
I don't think
I
so,
don't think
because
so.
these are specific to code and.
And owning land.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would not make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is. Okay, the next one is someone was questioning the requirement of the certifications and licenses, valid driver license with satisfactory driver record. I don't know if that's standard language for county and city. This obviously came from Chief County, so.
Standard what? I don't see any problem with that.
I think we
As
took
a county employee, they
We-
might check out the vehicle or something.
Yeah, I think if there's instances of travel or something like that, we just include that. And really, it's just boilerplate, I think, in
Yeah.
our job descriptions.
Well, so yeah, and we'll review that through.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah,
I think
whatever
that has to be
it
because
is.
if they drive a county vehicle,
Yeah,
then,
yeah, they have to be covered under
right,
insurance. Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Because it would depend on the violations.
Yeah, and they have to have a Colorado.
Does that need to be in here, willing to, or may need to travel?
I think that that might fall under the next section, which I took out that big table at the bottom that Chaffey County had, because I assume the county or city has their own.
yeah, we have a pretty standard format that goes in all of our job descriptions, that matches that table, so we would put our language in there.
Before we move on, is it really necessary that they have a bachelor's degree from accredited four-year quality university?
I was actually gonna ask that if there was something specific,
Yeah, like if they have a
Track.
bachelor's in musical theater, does that like really make them?
yeah, that was actually one of my questions was, does it need to be specified of, like,
Well, and that's why.
Or just taken out, right? Like if they have the experience, then does it really matter if they have a bachelor's?
And I think that third line is kind of the out for that. Any combination of education, training, or experience provides the required knowledge, skills, and abilities. So can you say preferred?
Yeah, or move the third bullet to the top and say any combination of these of the
Yeah,
following.
that's true.
Right, so
Yes.
that's the first thing that they read instead of reading that they have to have a bachelor's.
I have a suggestion from another similar position, but minimum qualifications, bachelor's degree in public administration, housing, land use, urban regional planning / business administration or similar field, and 4 years government administration experience or an equivalent combination of education experience and training.
I just like, I know a lot of people in housing and a lot of them didn't like start in housing from their bachelor's degree. So like specifying specific degrees, I think is also problematic. And I don't think it really makes a difference if they have the experience in other qualifications.
So I'm
But I
hearing-
don't know if there's a reason that like a bachelor's degree makes something more qualified regardless of experience.
yeah, I think if you wanted to call out that level of education, it would make the most sense to have specified educational experience, like planning,
Right.
you
So
know?
I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing from Noah that we should move it around and make it a little more vague. And I'm hearing from you two that it might be helpful to add on and make it more specific to what degrees. So I guess I'm looking for some clarification.
I like Noah's idea of putting it third and just say bachelor's degree preferred and leave it at that.
What, yeah, you could just say bachelor's degree preferred with a relevant field.
In a relevant field,
Perfect.
okay.
So you want to pose to that, moving the third?
Again, though, like if you had two candidates side by side and one had a bachelor's and one did, would you really prefer the one with the bachelor's? Like, does that really make a difference at this level?
If all things are equal, and that's the step, if one had a bachelor's degree in a relevant field, that might.
It wouldn't matter to me.
Okay.
Unless they were pursuing, like finishing up a degree. But if somebody just didn't finish, that, I think that said something about them.
So if it will impact the hiring process, it should be in here. If it wouldn't, then we should strike it. But it sounds like it would, so we should keep it and maybe just move it down and say relevant field preferred.
Okay, so I moved any combination to the top and then I'm putting preferred bachelor's degree in a relevant field at the bottom.
Great. And then just make sure that we say like any combination of the following education training,
Yeah, that one's at the top, very top
but just add of the
Oh.
following.
of the following. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then the last comment I have, I just need Jeff's help with. There were some, sorry, there was some items that were highlighted in yellow. I think from Sarah, and I'm not sure why they were highlighted. So there was core company, that one, number 7. And then essential duties, 1, which we relocated in essential duties F. Essential duties 9F. And I wasn't clear on why they were highlighted, and I didn't know if you had any insight on that.
I assumed those were weird formatting glitches, making it a Word document from a Google Doc,
Okay, great.
because there wasn't a comment associated with them.
Agreed. I didn't see anything in her comments that would lead me to believe that she was inferring anything.
Okay. Does anybody have any more edits, questions, concerns about the job description? Okay, so to recap, the action items are that I will get the Chaffey County IGA to Greg. Greg's gonna work on that IGA with the Board of County Commissioners. The Housing Authority is going to talk about if they want to be on the steering committee. And we'll report that back to Greg and the BOCC. And that's all I had written down.
Also, the mayor has to ask Christiana about differentiating the amounts on the ballot measure between short-term
I have
rentals and
those in
permanent.
the slide,
Okay,
yes.
cool. Christie to report back to the tourism panel about what they've discussed to get their confirmation of support. The mayor and Christie to get the estimates for the amount of money that would bring in with just STRs or STRs and commercial lodging. And I think you got it.
So note-taking, I really appreciate it.
Can I bring it back here for a second to the job description?
Yeah.
Whatever language we end up putting in the summary, I think should be copied in this reporting relationship section. Right now, it just says the position reports to the county administrator. Admin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wrote it.
And I think, sorry if you said this, Augustina, but I think there's also sort of an informal task for the city and county to just sort of like gut check that we have the funds in place to cover hiring this sooner rather than waiting until the 2022 budget.
Good idea.
Oh, I haven't caught that. Okay, I'm in.
I'm in, it's okay.
I think that this has been super successful. We've got a lot done. I'm not sure that we need another one, but if you guys do want me to facilitate another one, I'm happy to. I just need your direction.
I think at this point, really, we can work towards negotiations and an IGA together. And as long as you can send us those edits in that job description, then I think we can work on getting that posted with and work through that IGA together.
So
Between
that's
the city
another
and county.
action item is to, once this is finalized, to get it over
Yeah,
to.
Yeah, if you, all those edits that we discussed today, if you'll send that over to us, then we'll have our human resources manager put that into our county format and then move forward with the IGA.
Specifically, all 3 commissioners or just one of you?
I think it doesn't matter. You can
Maybe send it to
probably
both of us and then there's
Yeah.
double your chances that one of us catches it.
Or you just each assume that the other one responds.
Yeah, there is
That
I'll send it to both of you, and I'll text both of you.
Okay, sounds good.
Seems to be my go-to.
And she'll text you 5 minutes later. Did you do it yet? Yes.
I don't do that. I'm that much of a nag. Okay, does anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss before we wrap up for the day? Okay, so much for your dedication to housing. It definitely feels, we feel the difference in the dedication and that momentum is happening. And we're excited to see what this will look like for Lake County in the future. Grab some pizza and take it home.
Thanks.
I think we're- I'm happy to.
Crazy.
I think maybe